Hi, I'm Stephanie Vecchio, and this is episode 39 in our History Bite series. Today we will talk about Woodstock 1969, its origins and its legacy. Woodstock, fully named the Woodstock Music and Art Fair and promoted as an Aquarian exposition, 3 days of peace and music, is one of the most famous music festivals of all time and ultimately one of the greatest pop culture events of the 20th century. The festival was held on the dairy farm property of Max Yasgur in Bethel, New York from August 15th to August 18th, 1969. The festival was organized by Michael Lang, Artie Kornfeld, Joel Rosenman, and John P. Roberts, with Rosenman and Roberts financing the festival. These four men had very little experience in promotion, but managed to put together a musical phenomenon. The Woodstock organizers saw the event a little differently, but each one was committed to putting together an event that could potentially attract acts like Bob Dylan. They had decided on upstate New York for the concert and settled on Woodstock, New York. However, Woodstock residents strongly objected to the event, and the organizers moved on to another town. And when that didn't work out, Michael Lang was introduced to Max Yasgur by a local realtor in Bethel. Max agreed to hold the event on his 600-acre dairy farm, and permits were sought to make everything official. While initially the town supervisor agreed to the permits, town residents were strongly against the event, putting up signs that said, "Buy no milk, stop Max's hippie music festival." Despite objections, the permits went through and work began to build a suitable music venue. Even though the concert would be held in Bethel, the organizers kept the name Woodstock. With the venue secured, Woodstock's organizers could continue securing the musical acts. Even before they had a venue, Lang, Kornfeld, Rosenman, and Roberts were reaching out to artists to build what they hoped was an iconic lineup. This, of course, proved to be true. The first act secured was Creedence Clearwater Revival, or CCR, in April of 1969. Getting CCR would ultimately prove huge for Woodstock as it gave the festival credibility and encouraged other artists to sign on to the event, making it easier to promote to the masses. Other artists brought on for the event included Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Carlos Santana, The Grateful Dead, Joan Baez, The Who, Sly and the Family Stone, Melanie, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and so many others. A total of 32 musical acts graced the Woodstock stage. 13 were lead artists with backing bands, and 19 were group acts. Altogether, 163 musicians performed on the festival's main stage. With this lineup, all that was needed was a solid plan and a physical structure. This, however, became tremendously difficult. Although the venue was a great solution, the festival's organizers had secured the dairy farm so late in their planning process, about a month prior to the event itself, that creating a sound infrastructure seemed almost impossible. Fences, gates, ticket booths, and other pieces of infrastructure couldn't be built in time and would not be cost-effective. Ultimately, the organizers made the decision not to build a ticket booth and instead provided free tickets, losing a significant amount of money. They also opted to forego the building of a fence. Instead, they focused on building a solid stage with towers for sound and lighting and providing food and shelter for attendees. Although the festival eventually became a free concert, 3-day tickets were sold ahead of time for $18, $120 today. Tickets would have been $24 at the gate, $160 today, had a gate been constructed. Woodstock did pre-sell more than 100,000 tickets, but the event attracted far more than that. The Woodstock Festival was promoted and marketed well, possibly even too well. The festival was marketed as 3 days of peace and music, and the creators and organizers saw the festival as an opportunity for people representing different aspects of the 1960s counterculture movement to do something positive as a community and as a generation. The counterculture and hippie movement in the 1960s quickly responded with excitement, seeing it as an opportunity to fully embrace the freedom that music can bring. Press conferences were organized and newspaper ads published to promote the festival to a wider audience, and organizers did not expect more than 100,000 people to attend. The number of people who showed to get a glimpse of the remarkable artists playing and to be with a community of like-minded people blew all expectations out of the water and helped make Woodstock unforgettable. The Woodstock Festival took place from August 15th to August 18th, but 50,000 people were lined up and camped out even 2 days before artists were meant to play. Hundreds of thousands more people tried to make their way to Bethel, creating massive traffic jams and reportedly causing road closures. As the festival got underway, attendees flocked to the stage, and some even climbed the sound and lighting towers to get a better view of the performers. The weekend turned into rain, causing floods and a ton of mud. However, as festival organizer Michael Lang noted, people didn't leave. They made a celebration out of it and got really muddy. With reportedly over 500,000 people attending in total, other issues arose, like lack of food and proper sanitations. Still, the attendees made the best of the weekend, and it has been noted by many that everyone remained peaceful and cooperative the entire weekend. From the crowd and attendees, there was no violence and very little anger. The idea of a festival that promoted peace, love, and rock and roll truly came into being that weekend. The legacy of Woodstock isn't just the sense of peace and community, but of course, the musical acts that took the stage and the effect they had on music as we know it today. The first act to play was Richie Havens around 5 p.m. Havens was not scheduled to be the first performer, but traffic jams prevented the original opener, Sweetwater, from getting to the site in time. Sweetwater did perform, having finally made it to the venue. Also performing that evening and well into the night were Melanie, Arlo Guthrie, and several other acts. Folk music royalty Joan Baez closed out the first day around 1:30 in the morning. The second day of the festival had the most performers, almost too many to name. Santana took the stage, enthralling the crowds. Santana and his group are considered to be the breakout stars of Woodstock. They were known to a very niche audience in 1969, but after Woodstock, the country and the world would see Santana's talents, leading to an enduring legacy in the music world. Other acts performing were Canned Heat and the Incredible String Band. Huge acts like The Who, The Grateful Dead, CCR, Jefferson Airplane, Janis Joplin, and Sly and the Family Stone also performed that day. Each one of these artists had tired crowds dancing, singing, and cheering. Sly and the Family Stone performed at 4 a.m., but notably had almost an entire crowd singing, cheering, and dancing along with their high-energy set. Truly psychedelic group Jefferson Airplane closed out the second day, though by the time they were on stage, it was already 7 a.m. Before they began performing, Grace Slick said, "Now you will see morning maniac music." The last day of Woodstock, which would ultimately turn into the second to last day, saw music from Joe Cocker, Blood, Sweat and Tears, The Band, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and others. Joe Cocker opened the day with his band, the Grease Band, at 2 p.m. Joe actually arrived late via helicopter, but gave an excellent 90-minute performance. Although attendees were hoping that Bob Dylan would show up with his former group, The Band, the group still pleased the crowd with their performance, although a chant of "Where's Dylan?" ran through the crowd. By the time Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young performed, many attendees had cleared out and unfortunately missed some of the best moments of the festival. CSNNY would thrill the crowd with their performance and would bring on Neil Young to the shock of the audience. The morning of August 18th should have seen the start of the Woodstock Festival cleanup. Instead, because of traffic jams, torrential rain, flooding, huge crowds, and slightly temperamental artists, Woodstock ran into the early hours of an extra day. The morning of August 18th saw only about 40,000 attendees waiting for more musical acts. That morning saw the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, Sha-Na-Na, and Jimi Hendrix close out the festival. The concert-goers who did stay were in, as many know, for a historic moment. After the Paul Butterfield Blues Band played some music to help slowly wake up the crowd, Sha Na Na gave them a reason to stay awake. A little out of place at Woodstock, Sha Na Na, looking like greasers, performed hits of the 1950s and other doo-wop offerings. They had the crowd on their feet cheering. Finally, Jimi Hendrix took the stage at 9 a.m. Initially, Hendrix played some new stuff, but the crowd was anxious for his classics, so he switched gears and played more familiar songs like Fire and Voodoo Child. Finally, at the end of Voodoo Child, Hendrix and his bandmates just started to jam, telling the crowd they could leave if they wanted to. Fortunately for the crowd, they remained and got to experience magic as Hendrix began to play the opening chords of the Star-Spangled Banner, providing a thrilling instrumental that many felt embodied the turmoil of 1969. This moment is considered the most enduring of all Woodstock moments and memories. Hendrix closed, thanked the crowd, but came back for an encore. Finally, the chaotic but peaceful Woodstock experience had come to an end. After the festival was over, the organizers decided to produce a documentary to preserve the experience and also to help them recoup the money they lost from offering free tickets. The documentary allowed anyone who didn't attend to get a glimpse of Woodstock, as well as the peace of the hippie and counterculture movements. It also featured performances from many of the acts, though some groups like CCR, Blood, Sweat and Tears, and the band refused to appear as they were either unhappy with their performance or unhappy with the Woodstock experience as a whole. The documentary went on to win an Oscar for Documentary Feature in 1970. Woodstock's legacy remains strong, with 50th anniversary concerts, books, and movies coming out in 2019. The festival's influence on music has endured as well, and Jimi Hendrix's rendition of the national anthem is still talked about more than 50 years later. Ultimately, Woodstock would attract over 500,000 people, all looking to be part of a movement and a moment they hoped would change the world. It's hard to say for sure if they did change the world, but their hopes and participation and dreams of community helped shift perspectives and create peace, even just for a few days. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, click like, and if you watched on YouTube, hit subscribe. See you next time!